So 2024 has been a year for Magic the Gathering with 11 major releases affecting the multiple formats. And since I'm a content creator that covers singleton formats, I've kind of gotten hits from everything that's been released this year. So this video is all about the year in review for 2024, covering the highlights, the lowlights, and just the kind of that happened this year in Magic the Gathering. So let's start this off in order from the very first set of the year with Ravnica Remastered. Like the year prior when they had Dominaria Remastered, they went back to the same formula, but instead of pulling from sets that took place on Dominaria, we had the cards coming from the 9 sets that had taken place on the plane of Ravnica prior to this set. This one lands firmly in the list for me, mostly because it offered nothing new or groundbreaking to the game. We already had access to every single card in this set, and all it did was make a few of the higher priced singles a little more affordable, such as Divine Visitation, Lord of the Void, and Guardian Project, all of which dropped those cards by nearly half their preprint pricing as of this video, and are cards that I'd highly recommend picking up for your commander decks. Next up, and not straying from the plane of Ravnica, was the next set of 2024, and that was the greatly maligned Murders at Karlov Manor. This set marked the 10th time that Magic has returned to the plane of Ravnica and has become a favorite of the player base. And it had been more than 5 years since the last time we had been on the plane with the War of the Spark. It should have been a good time to revisit the world and introduce the newest players of the game to the beloved plane, but the execution of this set was simply just not that good. So why was it so bad? Well, simply put, they took too much liberty with the world of Ravnica, slapped a murder mystery veneer on top of it, and it had become a wholly unbelievable that anything going on in the set could be taken all that seriously. Suddenly, multitudes of the denizens on this world had been taken up becoming detectives, including many of the legendary creatures of the world that we've come to know over the many prior sets on the plane. And none of that is actually explained, which is where the problem comes in. It's all just shoehorned in simply because they wanted to make something out of a detective creature type within the set and the theme of a murder mystery. Someone I discussed it with likened it to a fashion trend. Everyone on Ravnica suddenly caught this fashion bug and decided that deerstalker hats were the hot trend, which coincidentally meant they all became detectives as well. If that sounds incredibly stupid, well, you've kind of hit on why this set failed so badly. But that wasn't the only reason. The set in general just isn't that great on the power scale either. That's not to say that the entire set sucked. There are some cards in the set that are really good, like the Surveil Land Cycle, Insidious Roots, and Delny Streetwise Lookout. There's also some other fun stuff in there, but the concentration of only a couple of small subsets of good cards makes the set suffer overall and made it very undesirable. My favorite cards from this set, however, are Doppelgang, Vein Ripper, and Prof's Eidetic Memory. So following the Murders at Karlov Manor, we've had very just sets and a low light set. So we're kind of overdue for a highlight at this point in 2024. And for the Commander players, at least, we got one with Universes Beyond Fallout. When this set released, I personally didn't have much interest in it because I had never played any version of Fallout before. But after playing with the cards, I was compelled to actually watch the Fallout TV show on Amazon, which was actually really good, as well as start delving into the lore behind some of the legendary creatures from the set, which that was kind of fun to mess around with on the side. With the 4 precon decks, the set had a little bit of everything for Commander enthusiasts and the Fallout players alike. So with the collector's boosters giving the hardcore Fallout fans access to like the Pip-Boy variants of some of the cards from the precons, as well as reprints of older Magic cards with a Fallout skin like Tarmogoyf, Lord of the Undead, and Walking Ballista. Of the 4 precons, the best out of the box was the Wise Mothman deck. It introduced the new Rad counter mechanic and supported it very well with cards that interacted with those counters and enough proliferate to either allow you to self-mill for gain or use those counters to burn your opponents down with the damage of the counters rolling off every turn. The only really bad deck of the bunch of these precons was the Energy deck featuring Dr. Madison Lee and Liberty Prime. The deck is just really weak compared to the other 3, and it just doesn't have enough sources of repeatable energy production to make it able to hang with the other precons right out of the box. That said, with the new energy cards in Modern Horizons 3, with some heavy tinkering, you can make this deck roll along pretty good as an upgraded precon. Moving past the Fallout set, we're into the month of May for 2024, and a set that I had high hopes for, but it didn't quite stick the landing with Outlaws of Thunder Junction. This set has lots of really good cards in the main set as well as the Commander precons, but the flavor of the set has some issues similar to those of Karlov Manor. But instead of an established world where they're suddenly changing it in odd ways like Ravnica did, we had a brand new plan that was to become the Western themed set that Mark Rosewater had hinted at over the last 2 to 3 years. And overall, it did feel like a Western, but it was more of a veneer of Western tropes painted over a slew of established characters. With the addition of the Omen Paths, we have been treated to characters from across the multiverse showing up on planes that they did not originate in for the game. And that was once a thing reserved for planeswalkers, but now any character that can access an Omen Path can now do. And that started with Wilds of Eldraine with one character, Troyan, a Vidalcan that came from Ravnica looking for adventure showing up on the plane of Eldraine. Then in the Lost Caverns, we had Kellen, who was originally from Eldraine, and Saheeli, who had desparked as a planeswalker, and last we had heard she was on Kaladesh during the Phyrexian invasion, is now on Ixalan via the Omen Paths. They came over to the plane. But then we get to Thunder Junction, our brand new plane that has never been visited before, but has somehow become a nexus point for Omen Paths. And we get 29 legendary characters in the main set, as well as 4 more that come from the precons for the set that are from other planes. And that's just the ones that I know of via the story beats and the card representation. There's likely some more that I missed. And on top of it, all these characters are villains from across the multiverse, and they somehow end up on Thunder Junction, take up life on the plane, commit crimes, and stake claims on this newly discovered plane. When you compare that to the other legends in the set that represent the locals of the plane, we get 10 characters that are not rehashing existing characters as a westernized version of themselves. And then the icing on the cake is the natives of the plane aren't even considered native to Thunder Junction in the lore. In order for it to make sense that this plane wasn't ever discovered before the Omen Paths, and that the Phyrexian invasion didn't actually come to the plane, they just wrote it as a plane that just appeared from nothing and the people wandered in and built it up. And that's where a lot of players take issue with this set. It is just a poorly written plot and the world building is just not there. It doesn't make a ton of sense why these characters, all these villains, have arrived on this plane. And it also does not make sense that the Aten characters that they created as a stand-in for Native Americans in this Western analog aren't even from this plane. It's like, where did they come from? If they're not from Thunder Junction, what plane did they come from? Because they have a very specific culture and all this stuff, but then they just show up here and make a life and that's it. And there's no explanation as to where they really truly came from. And the biggest cop out for me was the Thunder guns. It's just like, if you're going to have guns in the art and in the story, go for it fully and not some convoluted workaround about pistols and rifles that don't actually fire projectiles, but instead fire amounts to magical bullets. It's just, I know they don't want to put guns in Magic, but if you're going to have something like this and you want to go there, go there. So the icing on the cake for this set that they had to squeeze in a separate subset of cards into this set called the Big Score. And that was originally slated to be a separate release identical to the March of the Machine, the Aftermath set, with epilogue boosters that contained no commons and but it only had 5 or 6 cards in each pack. And that concept flopped so hard that they killed it and decided to slot the cards that were already designed for these new epilogue boosters into the main set boosters. But of course, you can file that under be careful what you wish for, because the cards from the Big Score show up so infrequently that any of the good cards from the Big Score now carry a big price tag if you want certain singles from that series of cards. All in all, this set was a mashed up mess in terms of its world building, its stupid decision to try and rehash those epilogue boosters, and its only saving grace was that the individual cards from the set were pretty good. And if you ignored the silliness of all these characters showing up, throwing on a cowboy hat and having a good time on Thunder Junction, you might have been happy to see some of your favorite characters from a different set getting a new version of a card. And as I said, there was good cards in the set, and my favorites from this set are Railway Brawler, Gisa the Hellraiser, and Obeka Splitter of Seconds. So after the messiness of MKM and Thunder Junction, Wizards really needed a hit, and they got one of a sort with this year's summer set, Modern Horizons 3. Now, I say of a sort because while the set was received much better than Thunder Junction and had more powerful cards in it, MH3 has been viewed differently by different segments of the community. Commander players love the set for the powerful new legends to build new decks around and spells to supplement their existing decks as well. For Commander, it was a banger of a set. We got new Eldrazi's, we got new free casting spells, new flip walkers that are two color instead of monocolor like the original Origins ones, and remakes of reserve list and powerful spells that use energy as a way to allow players to access cheaper variations of those kind of cards. For modern players, however, it has created some displeasure among those players, that's putting it lightly, and has even led to some quitting the format altogether because of each successive Modern Horizon set. It's taken the format that is supposed to be an eternal format, meaning the cards available to it don't rotate out, and forced an artificial rotation within that format. And if you look at the recent lists of top 10 cards played in Modern, it's a list that is nearly all Modern Horizons 3 cards except for one, which is apt, which was the One Ring. Now, fortunately, with the December 16th ban and restricted announcements, the hammer was dropped on the One Ring, and they also took out Amped Raptor from Modern Horizons 3 to try to knock that red-white energy deck down a peg or two. And on paper, it sounds like it should, since the One Ring was also in that deck. And in Legacy, we had two more Modern Horizons 3 cards that also got the boot, with Psychic Frog and Vexing Bauble being deemed too powerful for even the most powerful of formats. All in all, it meant that 3 cards from a set that's only about 6 months old got banned from 2 Eternal formats. So if this all sounds like one big clusterfuck, well, that's the problem with Modern Horizon sets right now being foisted onto the formats, and it's why cards from those sets are prime targets for bans right now. Within the last year, if you go back to last December's ban announcement until now, we have seen Fury, Grief, and Nadu Winged Wisdom, all Modern Horizons cards, get banned, joining Hogak Arisen Necropolis on the list of Modern Horizons cards that just went too far, and they likely won't be the last ones with how pushed these sets have been over the last 4 to 5 years. Overall, Modern Horizons 3 has had some really good individual cards, and it seems like they might have fixed the free spell cycles they've been coming up with, since this one doesn't have any that seem to be absolutely busted like the Evoke Elementals were. But they need to balance pushing these sets so hard to the point that all the cards from the previous Modern format are just rendered useless, and that they even start breaking things in Legacy. Now, that said, my favorite cards from the set for Commander are Argent Days, Chthonian Nightmare, and Fanatic of Ronus. Now, moving along, but not too long after the release of Modern Horizons 3, was another direct-to-modern set with Universes Beyond Assassin's Creed. Now, unlike the Modern Horizons set, this was not a full-size 350-ish card set that pulls from the aspected planes of Magic. Instead, we got a 100-card mini set featuring characters, art, and concepts from the world of the Assassin's Creed video games. Since this wasn't a full-size set, it also introduced the new Beyond boosters, which is a modified variation of the Epilogue boosters from March of the Machine: The Aftermath. As mentioned earlier, the Aftermath went so horribly that it killed the entire concept of Epilogue boosters altogether. But the powers that be for Wizards just keep riding this idea that players would be willing to pay the same or even more to get less cards, and once again, it did not go over well with the player base. Assassin's Creed did not sell all that great at release, with boxes of 24 packs going for around $140 to $150 at the pre-release window. That translates to around $585 to $625 per pack, which is more than play boosters for a standard regular release goes for. Today, the price is more in line around $3.90 on average, and it's probably where this should have been to start, and it likely would have resulted in the set being opened more up front. When you couple the lousy starting prices with the fact that the Assassin's Creed IP has been on the downswing for the last several years, it's not a great recipe for success. Once they wrapped up the story of their most popular character in Ezio, the series just hasn't been as revered as it once was, making it feel dated as a concept to bring into Magic via the Universes Beyond. As with many of these sets, I'm not saying the set sucked, as it had some really good cards in it, fun legends to build around for Commander, and something just for the remaining diehard fans of the Assassin's Creed franchise. The release was lacking when you compared it to the recent Universes Beyond sets like Fallout and Doctor Who. There were two big things I felt were actually missing from this set that might have helped it a little bit. One, there was very little support representing the Templars, the quintessential foes for the Assassin Order in the video games. There's just a handful of cards such as Hatham Kenway, Templar Knight, and Shay Cormac, but that's really it. There's no presence of the Templars in the set, and you really can't do a thematic Assassins versus Templar style build using the cards from the set. And that's a shame because there have been lots of named characters that they could have pulled from to make them feel known and as a threat to the Assassins in Magic. And that leads me also what they needed and what they should have done. My number two thing that was missing is this set really needed a couple of commander precons. They didn't need four precons like Fallout, but two would have been good, and you could have remedied my first issue with the set. They could have had a deck built around the Assassins and one built around the Templars. Not every color could have been represented, but it would have made the set more compelling in my eyes and drew more players to the release. So when you compare this Universes Beyond release to all the prior ones like Lord of the Rings, Fallout, Doctor Who, and Warhammer, it just kind of feels like it falls flat, and it's a shame because I really like Assassin's Creed. Of the new prints that came in the set, my favorite cards are Aveline de Grandpré, Altair Ibn Lahad, and Brotherhood Regalia. Now, after several months of sets that were just kind of for the year, we finally get to a set that everybody was hyped for and wanted to get their hands on with Bloomburrow. I cannot remember a set in recent memory that players were so universally happy to see coming to the game and that they were not disappointed by the final product. Bloomburrow had a little bit of everything for everyone. There was support for several major creature types, including enough to be able to now build decks around otters, lizards, frogs, bats, rabbits, and a true squirrel deck that just isn't about squirrel tokens. And I mean that seriously. My Cheddarfang deck, I actually replaced about 50% of the cards in the original build with Bloomburrow cards. It also had an appeal for cutesy animals for those who wanted something that wasn't Phyrexians or the Eldrazi. And it was a set that actually feels like a Magic the Gathering set. And this last point is hard to quantify. But in a year with sets wrapped in tropes like murder mystery, westerns, and 80s and 90s horror, this was the first standard set of the entire year that just felt like a true Magic the Gathering set. We got a brand new world with a story that wasn't some convoluted mess they had to try and force tropes around. It just felt right. And all of this doesn't even consider just how good the cards in the set were and how well it played out. This set actually got me brewing in standard again for the first time in almost 2 freaking years. And I didn't record anything from it because I wasn't comfortable with what I was messing around with, but I just had a ton of fun, and I did pick up my first box of boosters in over a year too. I still want to actually go back and pick up a couple of the precons from this set as well. I just haven't had the funds to do so. It's high praise in my book to keep wanting to go back and get more of a set well after its release. The favorite cards from this set are going to be Coiling Rebirth, Paw Patch Recruit, and Ral Crackling Wit. Now, immediately following one of my favorite sets of the year, less than 2 months later, we shifted to the complete and utter opposite of Bloomburrow with Duskmourn House of Horror. Now, I mentioned the 80s and 90s horror tropes when talking about what Bloomburrow wasn't, and this is the set where that came from. I am deeply torn on this set for many reasons. I actually like the 80s and 90s horror. I have seen lots of those movies and even own box sets of things like A Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th movies. However, I am not super keen on seeing this kind of thing rammed into Magic, especially just after coming from the set with anthropomorphic animals in it. The shift is just very jarring, and I think it would have been better served if there was some kind of buffer set in between them. It also tears me out of feeling like it's a Magic set when you have stuff like TV sets with ghosts in them and cheerleaders in full outfits on the cards, especially since we haven't ever seen anything like this on a plane prior to this set, and the explanations for them are pretty thin, kind of in the same vein as the guns but not really gun stuff in Thunder Junction. I'm also kind of over the body horror stuff that's present in the set. We just had 4 straight sets of body horror with the Phyrexians last year, where they were twisting people and creatures into Phyrexianized forms. We get similar stuff here with the humans that have been twisted into terrorizing clowns with grotesque features that really wouldn't be all that out of place in a pack of Phyrexian converts. What I did like from this set are some of the mechanics like Manifest Dread and Delirium. They present some of the fun building around mechanics that are worth messing around with in Commander and Standard. I also like the room cards since they give a new spin on dual-sided cards that are similar to how the Fuse cards from Dragon's Maze or the Aftermath cards from Amonkhet and Hour of Devastation acted like, rather having to pay for it all up front to get both sides like a Fuse, or being limited only able to cast one side depending if it's in your hand or your graveyard like Aftermath. The doors allow you to pick whichever side you want to start with and then cast the other side whenever you like. It's flavorful for the set, and it's an improvement over the older designs on a lot of levels. But overall, I was not a giant fan of this set, and it's the only set this year where I haven't picked up any of it in paper as yet, which kind of tells you my opinion of the set. However, my favorite cards from this set are Enduring Tenacity, Unable to Scream, and Head Shredder. Then we have the final paper release of the year. It's a new experiment for Magic the Gathering with MTG Foundations. It's a first of a kind set that entered standard rotation. However, rather than following the 3-year rotation pattern that the other releases in standard have, the cards in Foundations will be around for a minimum of 5 years, if not longer. The idea behind that is that they supply us with a major chunk of the base cards that you're going to need to build a standard deck over the next 5 years with Foundations, because many of the sets that they're going to be doing over the next few years won't even be Magic the Gathering multiverse sets. Instead, they're going to be Universes Beyond sets starting next year with Final Fantasy, Spider-Man, and an unannounced third set sometime towards the end of next year. And that's in addition to 3 other in-universe sets, making for roughly a new set every 2 months next year, with Foundations kind of as the binding set for standard to kind of hold it all together. Of course, that's not the only thing that Foundations has done. It's also fertile ground for Commander, with several legends in the set to build around and new cards to add to existing decks. Oddly enough, for being a modernized core set, Foundations is actually one of the better sets of this year. We get nostalgia hits with reprints that are strong, and even if they aren't playable right this minute, could see play once fall rotation hits in 2025 for standard. On top of that, we also get about half the set as brand new to Magic cards that are very strong and have created some brand new standard decks that weren't even possible before, like Cat Aggro and Red Burn, as well as improving existing decks. This set has a lot of promise, and I can't wait to see how it does when combined with what's coming next year. Now, I did say that this was the final paper release, but it also had companion products that were released alongside of it, with a beginner bundle, a starter kit, and a jumpstart set as well. The first two are as advertised. They're kits to get you into the game and start building your standard collection, and they are some of the very best products that they have ever conceived to actually do that. You can get somebody with zero clue on how to play the game into the game using the beginner bundle, and the guided playbook that's in there helps to show them how to play, and then they can graduate to a starter kit to begin building up their collection for standard, or someone who has like a limited amount of play in the game but wants to get into it, or has left the game and is trying to come back in. It's a great way to do that. And you can even use the same kit to start a commander deck or a draftable cube as well. I cannot recommend either of these products enough. The last one there, though, Jumpstart, can also be used to teach someone how to play, but it's better for players familiar with the game enough but want some variety in their gameplay, since it's 2 random packs. You just slap them together and go. But it has further implications as well. The obvious here is that we have new legends that we can build around, 27 of which to be precise. And that comes from these packs. Some of them are my favorite brews recently to come from the legends from the Jumpstart set, and you're going to be seeing more of them popping up from time to time on the channel. But the more fun thing you can do with these, if you have several variations of the packs, is to keep the packs intact, and you can buy cube repacks or something similar to hold them and replay the packs mixed with other packs from your box of Jumpstart boosters, giving you replayability with your Jumpstart packs. Foundations truly has so much for players of the game, and I am grateful that it exists. My favorite cards from the main set are Blasphemous Edict, Mossborn Hydra, and Banner of Kinship, and my favorite Jumpstart cards are Shrufus Sproutsire, Kala, Ajani's Pridemate, and Fumulus the Infestation. So, after talking at length about the sets that released this year, what's left? Well, we had a lot of releases, and I didn't even delve into releases. As for Secret Lair, well, I'm going to sum this up with one thing. Until they lose limited print run models or figure out a way to deter scalpers from buying up stock and reselling for outrageous amounts, I'm not even going to try to get my hands on a Secret Lair. For the most part, I don't care for many of the art styles or cards that they have on tap with the layers, but the one that I did want were the Marvel ones this year, and the sale for those were an unmitigated disaster this year. I didn't do a video on it when it happened because there were plenty of those going around at the time. I was not happy with how this thing went down, and it has major implications that it just was isn't worth your time to try and get a secret lair, because doing so with the loopholes that were present that allowed buyers to cut in line and left legitimate buyers that didn't know about how to cheat the line, they were straight in the line for hours on end only not to be able to get their thing. That's not cool. That's not what should have happened, and is one of the lowest of the low lights for 2024. Now, I know they did fix the loopholes with some of their re-releases after this Marvel mess they had, but I'm still not happy with the way they're handling secret layers. What did you guys think? What were your highlights? What were your lowlights of 2024? Let me know down in the comments down below. And while you're down there, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. All those things help my channel grow. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you for coming by, sharing your time with me, and I will see you in 2025.